to show you how to make a peony. Right, this is from our peony kitten kit, but you can use our ruffle die, and I've used our mistletoe die for the foliage on this, but you can use, we've got a new one coming out which will be a laurel leaf, so you could use that instead, but that'll be out soon if it's not already out by the time you watch this video. Okay, so you can make, so you, in the kit it comes pink, but you can change the colour by adding alcohol ink, so it's got a nice red one, so I used alcohol inks for that, and then I just brushed over with some distress inks to make a different change. So the kit will make you half a dozen blooms at least, if not more, and some foliage, and then if you've obviously got the dies, you can make as many as you like. So I'm using the paper from the kit, which is a 75 GSM, so it's the pink one I'm using from the kit. And then I've cut out some of the small leaves. I'm going to make some small leaves. So I'll do the leaves first. So I've cut them out, and then I'm going to shape each one. So while it's still in the strip, I was going to put a line through using the pokey tool. So you just get a little nice shape on it. Okay, and I want 5 of these for a little leaf sprig. So lift those up. So I'm going to cut 5 off because that's how many I need. So sometimes just hold on to them because they tend to fly off a bit, which that one did a bit. So keep holding them. So 3, 4, 5. There we go. So I've got 5 of those. So these are a bit smaller than the ones in your kit. I think you get a bit slightly bigger size in the kit, but the principle is the same. Okay, so you need a piece of wire. So cut out a piece of wire. So if you haven't got the kit, it's paper covered floral wire, and I would use probably 26, 28 gauge possibly. If you're doing even smaller flowers, because you do get smaller flowers in the kit. If you want to do smaller flowers, I'll probably use 28 to 30, 32 gauge for the wires. Okay, so then what you do is, obviously tweezers are a must. Put your tweezers there. So for the first one, which is the top one, add a little bit of glue, and then just put that on the top like that, and hold that in place. So that is your top one. Okay, and then we're going to glue the other pieces in. So grab your leaf, put a little bit of glue on the end, and then hold it in place until it sticks. So I'm using our bookbinding glue, which is fine. The tip is, if you want it a little bit stickier, just put it on, then just let it dry for a few minutes. It gets a bit stickier. It gets to the point where it gets too sticky and you can't use it at all, but you want it at that sweet point. Oops. Okay, so you obviously got to be careful, because once they're on, they're quite fragile until they're actually glued, and then the glue's dried. So take that one off, put that one on there, and then do 2 at the bottom, and below that, and this makes a nice little foliage sprig. And a little bit more glue. There we go. Okay, so you just move that across. There we go. So that's your little sprig, and then you just put that in a little foam just to keep that dry. So I'd leave that now until it's dry before we do anything else with it. So here's one I did earlier, but I can use, oops, here's one I did earlier, so I can use that. So you could put a bit more colour on there if you wanted to. So I'll leave that one there. So I now need to do our flower stem. So I'll show you what I did. So in the kit, it already comes like this. It's already done for you. But if you need to do it yourself, just put a tiny bit of glue on the end and a bit of either coloured sand, or put some plain sand on there and colour it afterwards. So I have got some coloured sand here. So I'll show you what to do on this one. So a tiny bit of glue. Oops, and then put that at the end. Okay, and then that is your little stamen. Whoops. Okay, there's your little stamens. Okay, and then just leave that to dry. And then you can use it. So here's some I did earlier. So in the kit, you get a number of strips of these, and you've probably got enough for 6, and you might even get some more out of it as well. So you want to have about 4 or 5 small ones, and then about 4 or 5 of the bigger ones. So you need those for both. So right, as you can see, they've got little piercing holes in there. Okay, so before you take them off the strip, it's easier just to enlarge the piercing hole. So you've got poke your tool and you just press it in and just make the hole slightly larger. Okay, as you go down. So I'm going to show you. Okay, and you do that to the little ones as well. Right, if you try to do this without a piercing hole, you'll just go through the wall of the petal, and you won't get what you need. It'll just tear it. So that's why just wiggle it around just gently. Okay, so you get that. And then you need to cut these out. So you can do this as a strip. So just cut this out. So you want to do it just at the base of the flower. So you end up with something like that. So right, so if I just cut that, I've got a little tiny bit of tail on there, so I'll just take it out. That tiny bit of tail won't matter too much, but I'll just cut it out. There we go. Right, so you don't want it any. Whoops. There we go. There we go. You see that? There we go. So that's as short as you want to get. So you've got a little hole in there like that. Okay, so you need to do that for all of them. And you need about 4 or 5 for each petal, each flower rather. So just chop those up. So I'm going to use 4 for this one, and I'll probably use the same one for the big ones as well. So obviously the more petals, the bigger and blousier your flower. Okay, so all of those. So what I'm going to do is gently just shape each one. So all I'm doing is basically breaking the fibres down on here. So I'm just stretching the fibres of the paper. So I'm not being too careful about it. Okay, you may have to redo the pokey hole, but we'll see. So then you start threading them on. So I'm going to thread on the smaller ones first. Okay, so I'm going to put a tiny bit of glue just at the base. Just at the base of that. Like that. So a tiny bit of glue there. Use my tweezers. And bring those up. So I've got 2 petals there. So what I'm going to do is squidge them together. Okay, then I'm going to put a tiny bit of glue. And put the next petal up. So I've got a tiny bit of glue. Put the next petal up. And give that a good squidge as well. So you want it. So the more you squidge, the better. So you can really right. So you end up with that. Okay. And then you're going to thread a big one on. Okay. Tiny piece of glue, tiny bit of drop of glue to keep it in place. Bring it up, and give that a good squidge. So obviously you're being careful that you're not breaking the flower. Okay, so you end up with that, and then you put your other petal and you do that petal opposite that if you can. So you can press that in. So that's where my petal is, and I'm going to do opposite that. So tiny bit of glue just to keep it in place. Bring it up. Give it a good squidge. these aren't difficult to do. A little bit on the fiddly side, but not difficult. So then I'll put another 2 on. So I do the other 2 exactly the same way. Right, sometimes what you might find on your paper covered wire, sometimes it comes unraveled. If it does that, you want a tiny bit of glue at the end and just rub it in your fingers like that, and it'll go back to being sharp again. This one didn't, but sometimes it does. So then just alternate this round. So just that one will go there. Press that one and squidge in. And then the last one. And then squidge in. So now I've got sort of a blousy flower. So that's the shape start of your peony. Okay, like that. And then you're going to put your calyx on the back of it. So your calyx is, I'm using a 6 petal one. That comes in the thread. It comes in the kit, but also if you've obviously got the die, you can make as many of these as you like. If you haven't got the calyx, the star flower, you could choose a star flower, possibly 6 petal star flower. So then you shape it and make a hole in it. So you end up with that, and then you're going to thread that. So basically a peony. Spread it out a tiny bit, and you're going to put some glue like that, and then bring that up and just squish that together. And that is basically your peony done. Okay, if you wanted to, you could paint those together if you wanted to bring them a bit together. So the other thing you can do is now to give it a bit more personality. So you've got that, you've got the yellow centre, and you've got the pink on the outside. Now to give it a little bit more life and a bit more personality is you can use distressings. So, and then just gently just brush that. And it gives it a little bit more definition. Oops. And a bit of shape, so you can make it as dark or as light as you like. So just a little tiny bit there. Just bring that up, and that just helps give it a bit more shape. So then you can then put it in with your bunch of flowers like that. Okay, and obviously then you've got your foliage, and then you can make a little bouquet, or even a buttonhole. Oops, there we go, or a buttonhole even. There we go. So that's how you do your peony. So it's quite simple, a little bit fiddly, but quite simple. Anyway, I hope you enjoy making yours. All right, until next time, thanks for watching. Bye.